President Kaljulaid, I'd like to thank you for joining us today on One America News. I'd like to start by asking you about your working lunch and meetings this week with President Trump. What stood out to you most during these meetings that took place at the White House?
I would say frank and open exchange of views. It's always good to talk to your friends and close allies about your world vision and your worldview. And it's good if frank questions are asked and they are getting frank answers. I really appreciated the discussion with President and with his team around the table.
During these conversations that took place, and obviously we saw a little bit of this in the joint press conference that you took part in with other Baltic leaders, this question of Russia and whether or not President Trump has been tough enough on the Russian government. I'd like to ask you, what sort of conversations took place regarding Russia when you spoke with President Trump and the other Baltic leaders?
We discussed the security threats which we share, but not only Russia. 360 degrees. We are raising our participation in Afghanistan again, for example. So we discussed all the security questions which are important today, and it was very interesting to hear views which come for the regions which do not particularly concern us. About Russia, I can discuss for hours myself. Probably there was something interesting for President Trump to be heard. For me, the discussion of other regions was more interesting.
What did you tell President Trump about Russia?
More or less the same as I tell also publicly, that Russia is unpredictable. And our reaction to first elements of, not respecting international rules-based order in 2008 in Georgia, our response was weak. So we are partially guilty that Russia misread the situation and attacked again in Ukraine. Luckily, we got our act together, and now we need to have patience, strategic patience, to stand strong, keep our sanctions in place. I'm not against keeping also talking to President Putin. Lots of global leaders do talk to President Putin as well, but from the position of strength.
Have you spoken with President Putin following his election victory?
No, but I sent him my congratulatory letter.
So I'd like to ask you, the president here in the United States, President Trump, received some criticism for congratulating President Putin. What was your reaction to seeing President Trump call President Putin and congratulate him on his
This is
victory?
what you do. Somebody is elected. I don't think that you can quite call them elections. And if you look at the election day, then maybe everything was more or less by the book. But if you see Russia has no free media, etc., it's not a free society, so these are not real elections. Yet this is what we do. We send congratulations to another head of state who is elected or continues.
You mentioned Afghanistan. Next month, Estonia will deploy dozens of troops to Afghanistan as part of NATO's Operation Resolute Support. As a participating country in this operation, I'd like to ask you, what end do you see in Afghanistan? How would you define victory in Afghanistan for the global community?
Victory in Afghanistan would mean that Afghanistan has a stable government which is fair to its own people.
And do you see that happening in the near future?
I don't predict future, but we wouldn't do it if we would never believe that this could be brought about or this would happen.
Do you feel that your participation in NATO pledging this money towards this mutual defense was something that helped you connect with President Trump?
Definitely he appreciates this, and I appreciate his support for rising defense expenditure in Europe, because Europe has to do more to defend itself. That much is clear. For us, since joining NATO, we've realized this is your Article 3 obligation. First and foremost, you must be able to defend your own territory. It is part of NATO's territory, but you have to be able to.
What commitments did President Trump make to you about the relationship between the United States and Estonia moving forward?
I think he made it publicly. We have never let you down. We will never let you down. We didn't come here to get a basket full of goodies. We came to have a frank exchange of views. We also presented the world a joint declaration also reminding that our cooperation is based on democratic values and respect of rule of law. All this is important.
Was there one issue, though, when you're looking back on the meetings that you had at the White House with President Trump? You say these were frank discussions, they were upfront discussions. One issue that maybe you didn't agree on, that moving forward, Estonia saw this different than the United States. Was there anything that stood out like that to you?
Yes, some things seem different. If you come from Estonia and if you look how Europe now sees its defense and what it is ready to do to rise its expenditure on defense, etc., you feel that things are moving in the right direction. Looked from here, it seems to be, well, that impatience is the main feeling what you have towards European allies and partners. One difference of the viewpoint, I think, perfectly legit to have.
One piece of foreign policy that the United States and Estonia historically over the past few years have agreed upon is this idea of eradicating ISIS. The focus on a global campaign against terrorism. I'd like you to talk a little bit about the role that Estonia has played in the Middle East in both Iraq and Syria, and what you feel that role will look like moving forward as ISIS is very close to being completely defeated.
We are contributing with the skills which we have. We are relatively good at training also other forces to search for IEDs, how to handle them, all this part. And there are other specific capacities which Estonia can contribute and is continuously contributing, be it in the force protection mission or be it in the training mission. We are in it where we can. We are a tiny country and we don't contribute thousands of soldiers. But those who are there, they are always of really good training and they are very much appreciated as part of those missions.
And if I could ask you about cybersecurity, your defense minister last week said that as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, Estonia would encourage the UN to put a great emphasis on crisis prevention. Do you believe the United Nations is doing enough right now to promote the online safety of its member states?
No, there was a working group which tried, for example, to agree how international law applies in cyberspace. A lot of work was done also by my compatriot Marina Kaljulaid, and I would like to commend her for the work she is undertaking in the United Nations and in other frameworks to make the world realize that we need to regulate cybersecurity. We need to understand how our rules apply also in this domain and in this sphere. This is extremely important. And indeed, our United Nations Security Council campaign seems to also here have one of its missions, whether we are elected or not, campaign will deal with this matter and promote this issue. If we are elected, we will definitely take this to the Security Council table, cybersecurity.
President Kaljulaid, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We can use your help. Call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call today.